So hold on to your seats on today's show. We're going to break down one of the most popular products out there in the financial industry at large. And our breakdown hopefully will give you a little bit of pause before you jump head first into one of these products. Reality is, sadly, a lot of people are finding themselves in these products without really understanding what it is that they are. So we're going to talk about that on this week's episode of Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. One of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, also a top 25 financial planning podcast on the World Wide Web. Check us out at our own website at nelsonfinancialplanning.com to find out how you can schedule an absolutely free conversation with any one of our certified financial fiduciaries at Nelson Financial Planning, like Rob Field. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Morning, Joel. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me once again.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I always like coming on the show. We always have very up-to-date topics, latest things going on, kind of gets us talking about different things that are, I find, very interesting.
We got a lot of topics to cover today. You know, it's funny, Rob, folks often ask me, how do you do the show every week with different topics that don't really repeat? I think a lot of shows out there, you hear the same kind of spiel over and over and over again, and I'd like to think ours is much more topical and timely each and every week.
I think so, because, of course, the industry we're in, every day there's a lot of news coming out,
right.
New investments, new ideas, new tax situations. So there's plenty of things to talk about. The key is to make sure we share the important ones with our listening audience.
That's correct. And, of course, here we are. This is actually our last show for the month of February. Next Sunday, it's going to be March already. It's unbelievable how quick the calendar is rolling by. And then this past week in the markets, once again, it was another short week with the President's Day holiday on Monday. So it's been kind of this weird start to the year where I don't know, we've had maybe 1 or 2 weeks where there's been actually 5 trading days in the market so far this year.
Right. And it always throws the clients for a loop and of course, makes our month go fast. February by itself only has 28 days.
Right.
Then you throw in a couple of holidays, and next thing you know, we are in March.
It does. And the frustrating part about these sort of holidays that people don't quite kind of have on their calendars, if you will, is that if the market's closed, that's going to kind of delay when you're ultimately going to get any kind of money that you thought you were going to get within a certain time period.
Right. Well, the thing we always hit is somebody says, every month I want my money on this specific date. And then if it happens to be a withdrawal on a Friday, you got Saturday, Sunday, nothing happens. Mondays when the holidays, Suddenly it's a 3-day delay, and that always prompts a few extra phone calls.
That is very true. In other news, of course, this past week, earnings season for the fourth quarter of last year starting to kind of wrap up. I guess the big news out of the week was Walmart's commentary about looking ahead, some concern about consumer continuing to spend at the same level. So certainly a week that, to your comment, Rob, had plenty of its share of headlines, that's for sure, as they always do, right?
Right, exactly.
Another thing that caught my eye this past week as well, and there's always these data points that kind of come across our desks. This one had to deal with the increase. This was kind of interesting, particularly here in Central Florida, real estate market. The increase in the number of homes taken off the market after failing to find a buyer increased for the month of December about 64% over the prior year. So perhaps, something going on in the real estate business out there at large. That's for sure.
Well, certainly. The real estate market has been kind of tough for some time now, and it's pricing out a lot of people for sure. But this new news may give some potential buyers a little bit of hope for the future.
Yeah, and I think let's not forget, home ownership is such a fundamental building block of wealth over time. I mean, we get the mortgage and you got 30 years to pay it off. Maybe you're doing it on a 15-year basis. But what that means is that by the time you get to retirement, you shouldn't have that mortgage. And of course, not having a mortgage in retirement, that's a pretty good thing.
Well, it's always our goal to help our clients. That's a big piece of the nut. So, you move from working to retirement, your income definitely is probably going to drop. If you can not have to worry about $2,000 to $3,000 worth of HOA and mortgages and things like that, it makes budgeting a lot easier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The biggest development, of course, this past week was yet another development involving the beneficial ownership information reporting requirement for small businesses in America. This one's just been kind of all over the map over the past few months.
Right, that's the one that it's been on, then it's off, and then it's on again. Of course, it's going to impose, a burden on the small businesses in America. It forces them to register with that U.S. Treasury FinCEN department.
Correct. And yeah, that's what for our listeners who are unfamiliar with this, if you have a small business, and it doesn't apply to larger businesses, it's specifically targeting smaller businesses, where you have to go online, file a report, and ultimately disclose a lot of details about who the owners are, including uploading pictures of their driver's license or passport. The point of that is to just require businesses to share that information as a way to help the federal government track fraud, track criminal enterprises. But, as I understand criminal enterprises, they probably are the ones that aren't going to bother to comply with this in the first place.
That's not surprising, right?
You're right. I mean, the goal is to ferret out criminal enterprises, but aren't those the ones that don't really care one way or the other? And what it does is it does put on ongoing requirements for businesses to make sure that those filings are up to date and to make sure that any changes of address or anything like that you go online and you do that. Otherwise, you wind up facing fines again.
Exactly. So I know you're bringing that up. So my question would be, another court decision that just came down that you want to talk about?
Correct. Another court decision came on down. This one out of the Eastern District of Texas decided that the BOI's beneficial ownership interest reporting requirements once again back on. So on again, off again, on again, at least for this week. And so the Department of Treasury, who obviously runs FinCEN, said, all right, fine, it's back on. The only good news, I guess, in any of this is that instead of the deadline being February 19th to get these filings done, it's now March the 21st. But here's the crazy thing. At last count, only like 9 million of the expected 30-odd million businesses that had this filing requirement had in fact filed. So that's going to require folks to really focus on getting that report done between now and March the 21st. That's right around the corner, that's for sure.
Right. Well, we will keep everybody updated as those changes as come along. I saw a statistic this past week that I found kind of interesting. It was in reference to China's distressed real estate debt. It's kind of been a growing issue over time. It's now in excess of $160 billion. So what you got now there, because they were so aggressive years back, was a lot of buildings that are sitting empty. So you got a lot of large space. It's no inhabitants. It's just sitting there destitute almost. And it just shows that China's estimated growth potential from years back has just waned off dramatically.
Sure. Spent a lot of money on a lot of projects, a lot of building projects that, didn't have any particular supply.
Right. But this past week, we also got some exciting news here in the office.
Yeah. We were selected, or our book was selected, Next Gen Dollars and Cents was selected by the Board of Editors to be featured in the prestigious Los Angeles Times Festival of Books held at the end of April out at the University of Southern California. I know the office asked, hey, does that mean we all get a trip to California in late April? And I'm going with no. It's great scratch that off. But it was a competitive process, and we were pleased, based on the editorial evaluation of the book itself, pleased to have been selected on that. So exciting stuff there, that is for sure. And we've got much more information, of course, to share with you on this week's episode of Dollars and Cents. So make sure you stay tuned through the break, and we'll be back after these messages. Well, Rob Field, welcome back to the program.
Good to be here. First segment went well.
Well, I hope so. Hopefully we still have a listening.
Fun.
Yeah, hopefully we still have a listening audience. I think this next topic is such an important one, though, because we're going to start to talk about the conversation about products that, at the end of the day, really require a much greater discussion of what we need to be talking about in terms of our clients. And, you know, it's easy. This is probably one of the most misunderstood topics in the industry, and an increasingly oversold yet misunderstood product that, of course, if you're a regular listener to the show, you know that we have never really had a particularly high opinion of this product, right, Rob?
No, that's true. We've never been a fan of annuities for a variety of reasons. First of all, they're very complicated. You know, it's people, the salesman who's trying to show it to them makes it sound real simple, like, hey, it's just really, really good money and great income for you. Then we come, where we get involved is people come in, they've already got it, they're stuck with it. And now they're like, what can I do? And there's not a lot of options once you get to that point. Again, what we find out is most people don't understand exactly what they invested in.
Yeah. Although in some cases, particularly of late, Rob, I think folks have been able to come to us in the presentation part. And that's one of the things we're going to kind of dig into as we have the opportunity to really walk a client through exactly what was in that 20-page presentation and really help to kind of illuminate what the real deal was behind all of that. Certainly, when we think about annuities, we've seen a dramatic increase in sales that unfortunately accompanied by a dramatic decrease in investor understanding of these products. So let's start there, Rob. What exactly is an annuity? Let's define that for our listeners.
All right, so just a actual definition of the annuity is it's a contract. It's between an insurance company and an individual. It does guarantee a series of payments in exchange for the premiums they put in or a lump sum, something like that. Then these payments are guaranteed for a specific period of time. Could be for somebody's life, could be for a period certain. And it's just your standard, give me some money, I'm going to throw you some money back. Now, it sounds attractive when somebody says to you, hey, I'm going to pay you an income for the rest of your life. You don't have to worry about, no matter how long you live, you get income. But when you run the numbers, when you actually say, well, performance-wise, what kind of performance do I get? It's really a letdown.
Well, and that's such an important statement you just made there, because I think that's probably one of the biggest issues with the annuity conversation is that they are more than willing to sort of count the return of your money back to you as part of their quote unquote return. And that leads to a lot of misunderstanding, and I would even go so far as to say misleading advertising in terms of what it is that you actually get. Another term that you hear a lot about is this guaranteed retirement income benefit. Another one where, okay, it sounds like you're going to get a pretty high level of guarantee income. Maybe it's 6%, 7%, whatever the case may be. But that is again, not really how it actually works.
Right. It's not comparing apples and apples, because what they're telling you is a guaranteed income. It's not guaranteed return or an interest rate or anything like that. They're just telling you, we're going to send you some money. We guarantee we'll send you that amount of money. But as we're going to notice in a couple of minutes, it's not always about how well it performs. It's about giving up control.
Yeah, no. And to your point, guaranteed income for life is not a guaranteed return for life. I think that's a great expression that I've heard you use at the office before. So you've got sort of 5 different concepts or terms that you typically hear in these annuity presentations that unfortunately sound a lot alike and
Right.
oftentimes used quite interchangeably. So let's talk about those 5 unique terms and kind of get into the details a little bit, if you would.
Sure. And a lot of these terms, you'll hear them in the investment industry in general, but they're specific to an annuity. It means a little bit different. The first thing you always hear is about the interest rate, because that's what people walk in. They say, they have told me that they're going to give me 8% interest, and that's an income number, and part of that comes from their actual investment. An interest rate is really just a stated percentage, creates a dollar amount. Typically, you see just a standard interest bearing something like a savings account at the bank, a money market, or a fixed annuity. But then you go to the next step and you start talking about the word yield, which is what does that really equate to? And then at times you start talking about, like on a bond where the bond price can fluctuate, the yield could be a different number than the interest rate.
Sure, you got the yield to maturity, you got the yield to call. I mean,
Correct.
Yield can mean all kinds of things depending upon how you're referencing it back to the ultimate product.
Right. In the bond market, bond prices change to make the yield comparable with what the current interest rates are in the bond market. Not to go too deep into that, but yield's a little different than interest, and obviously we can explain that in great detail if somebody wants to chat more D's. The other thing we look at is return. So return is now the whole ball of wax, I think of. It's what you might get in interest, what you might get in dividends, the growth that you get. That's our total return. And then that can be computed and shown to somebody as, your annual return or year-to-date return or monthly returns, things like that. The next one, this is where the annuities kind of come in, is income. Because income is not related to your return. It's not related to the interest you earn. It's the amount of money that comes out of an investment. So this is where the annuity company sort of entices people, because they'll say, and we hear this a lot, we're going to guarantee you 8% for the rest of your life. And most people take that at face value to say, oh, I'm going to earn 8%. Guaranteed.
That's my return, right?
Right. That's my return. And it's not, because we're going to talk a little bit about the guarantees and the values. You're giving up the investment itself when you flip a switch and decide to have it create income. We're big on income. I mean, obviously, we have our clients who are taking income, and we work with them to decide if that income number is comparable with their investment objectives. But we don't guarantee them an income. We don't guarantee anything. We simply try to tell them, here's what the market can bear, and here's an income stream we're comfortable with recommending for you.
No, that's very true. But to that point, guarantee, that word, and I remember my late father-in-law using, saying it this way, and I think it's important to remember. When you talk about guarantee, guarantee winds up being the most expensive word in the English language. I mean, there's just no other way to describe it. And at the end of the day, there ain't nothing guaranteed in this world other than taxes, and eventually you'll hit the dirt.
Right, which is a good point that you're bringing up. If a client is looking, or a prospect is looking at something and they're being told you're going to be guaranteed something, be real careful about what it really is, because it's not a guaranteed return. It's a guaranteed income. And you'll realize real quickly some of that income is just your own money coming right back. Which brings us to that last phrase, which in the annuity world is annuitization. This is their way of saying we're going to generate income. And so that annuity, you'll notice they don't tell you an annuitization rate. They tell you the income rate, because they want it to sound like you're getting a nice big income. That's going to be, they're looking at your longevity. And the reason that the insurance company is looking at your longevity is because they're planning on giving you a lot of your money back, but they don't want to give you more back than they think you would live to. So you just got to understand their calculation is not on their estimated returns. It's based on what they think you're going to live to.
Well, and that's the whole concept. I mean, these are insurance company issued products. So, yes, there is the guarantee, but, the guarantee only lasts so long as ultimately that insurance company can make the right calculation in terms of what your life expectancy actually is, so that they don't get in the business of overpaying people. That would be a problem for the insurance company when they wind up overpaying people based on kind of how the numbers are that they have projected. So, Rob, that's a lot of terms. and an awful lot of them seem to sound a lot alike. We're going to get into the specifics of a proposal that we helped that a client brought into us to break down, and we're going to do that after these messages here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris and Rob Field of Nelson Financial Planning. Yeah, really kind of doing a deep dive for our listeners on some of the concepts. And I think in the last segment, we really kind of kept it more just what's an annuity and what are the concepts and the terms that you're going to hear. Because, Rob, you had identified 5 different concepts that at the end of the day all sound a little bit alike. And unfortunately, the biggest part of the confusion when folks put money into an annuity is that a lot of those terms kind of get used interchangeably, and man, that really creates a tremendous amount of confusion over what people actually have.
Right. We talked about 5 different terms that were sort of quasi talking about either, the return or the interest or the income, and a lot of people think that's synonymous.
Right, it's all the same thing. Yeah, no, they all mean very, very different kinds of things. So from time to time, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of folks come in to the office and say, if they're in that an annuity product, they're looking for an explanation of what exactly is going on, because it never really turns out to be the way it's sort of billed. In this case, this past week, someone came to us before they had put money into it, because once you put money into these things, you can't really get your money back without a big cost or a big surrender or something like that. In this case, though, it was still in the proposal phase. So we were able to kind of walk through and look at a proposal in detail with a client and really help them understand what it is that they were looking at. And Rob, you've got some of the highlights, if you will, from the proposal that we saw that we wanted to share with our listeners this morning.
Right. There, as you can imagine, this is something that was handed to the client. So the front page was very dramatic and had a lot of catchy ideas. First of all, how much income they're going to be guaranteed. But it's a multi-page proposal. I mean, there's 12, 14, 16 pages of numbers that are tiny in print, and most people don't really take a peek at it. So what I did was kind of just look at what they defined as the highlights, what the insurance company was saying, hey, these are the things you should really pay attention to, and what do they really mean? So they always talk about guarantees. There's always a guaranteed income, and that's catchy, the thought of getting guaranteed income for the rest of your life. But they also talk about guarantee returns, and it's only a minimum of about 3%. Yeah. I mean, once you get past this fancy upfront maybe bonus you get, they only really have to pay you about a 3% interest on your investment. So that's, as an investment, the annuity doesn't really become that attractive.
Rob, that's a fair point. That's one of the things that always drives me crazy about these annuity presentations is that, in these 14 pages, 16 pages, there's the guaranteed sheet, and then there's the non-guaranteed sheet.
Right.
And I'm telling you, everybody always goes to the non-guaranteed sheet, but the reason that you may be attracted to an annuity product is for the guarantee. So you've got to really focus on the guarantee. What are you actually getting on a guaranteed basis? But far too often, the sales presentation is on the non-guaranteed side of it, which basically makes a lot of assumptions about what the returns are going to be, what the market's going to be, and all of those kinds of things. It's unbelievable.
Right. And when we saw those assumptions, they were above average market returns. And they were numbers that really aren't sustainable. But again, they're calling it non-guaranteed. They haven't guaranteed that.
Right.
They just said,
well, there's the guarantee sheet.
Wouldn't this be wonderful if it occurred? Well, sure it would. But
right. But that's the same thing. But by the way, if the focus of the presentation of the annuity is on the non-guaranteed sheet, that's just called regular good old-fashioned investing. I mean, get yourself a diversified portfolio and stay away from this nonsense at the end of the day.
Exactly. And they talk a lot about the growth, like, you're tied to this index, and this index has a really strong return, and they just allude that you're going to get that kind of a return year in and year out. But what they don't realize is they cap the return. They're like, well, we, in order to give you a guarantee that your account won't drop a certain amount, we're also going to cap your upside. Well, when you look at the market over multiple years, it does go up. So, again, people get scared. They're like, oh, I'd love to have a guarantee that my investment won't go down. But at the same time, if it's an investment and they're capping the upside, you're not getting full returns.
Well, and here's the thing that always drives me crazy about these things is that when they're talking about the index and they're talking about index performance, they'll use a price value. Okay, and as you know, that price value excludes out the reinvestment of dividends. I mean, that's
right.
Standard across any of these kind of index link or whatever it is, or these caps, these ratios. The dividend reinvestment is a major. If you look at the history of the market, that's almost 50% of the return in the market. So know that game is getting played where, if you think about it on a historical basis, half of the return is getting excluded from how they measure the performance of the index. It's unbelievable.
Right. I mean, that's compounding 101, right? Earn some money, generate some dividends, reinvest the dividends. Now you've got a larger amount that will continue to grow. Those indexes are just a stripped down version of you have access to these stocks, but you don't really get all the growth potential.
No question. Well, especially once you strip out the dividend reinvestment. It's just unbelievable.
Right. So the other highlight that they like to point out is the protection, which is the downside. They'll limit how much it can go down, but they're also, in return, you got to give up a limitation on it growing. So again, as an investment, I don't really think that capping your performance and limiting your upside is really going to be in your best interest. And of course, the big thing on the annuity is it's a tax-deferred instrument. So, you put the money in, you don't have to pay taxes as you go along. There are numerous ways to defer taxes.
Right.
And not pay as high of a fee and not be encumbered by all these bells and whistles that you've paid for.
Well, and to stay on the tax topic for just a second, if you put after-tax money in, okay, so we're talking about non-IRA money. If you put after-tax money into an annuity, the growth, which would typically be capital gain if it was outside of an annuity, the growth becomes ordinary income, which is taxed at a higher rate than capital gain. So that becomes a little bit of a problem.
I never see that on the front page of the proposals that the clients have. They don't.
Right. It's tax deferred.
It's tax deferred, which sounds great, but
when you take the profit, especially on an after tax or a non-qualified annuity, that profit could have been capital gain, could have been eligible when you die for a step up in basis even, but that doesn't happen. I mean, that's ordinary income when you take it out.
Right. So on that contract, we're helping them analyze. We were looking at the guaranteed versus non-guaranteed numbers in general. On the annuity, we kind of reviewed it. We noticed that the guaranteed income was about 50% of what the enhanced benefit could be. So that's, you're only guaranteed half of what he's dangling in front of you. And then when you ran it down, we noticed that the guaranteed income starts about 7.2%. Which, like, okay, 7.2 isn't bad, but part of that 7.2 is your own money coming right back to you.
Yeah. Now let's really give an explanation here, or an example, okay, of how this actually works. All right. So let's say at 65 years of age, I put $100,000 into the annuity, and the annuity company, the insurance company, the salesperson that gave you that nasty, ridiculous, silly product. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that part. Said, okay, I'm going to give you a guaranteed income of 7%. So, okay, you gave me 100, I'm going to give you back $7,000. Okay, per year. Let's spin that out over 20 years, normal life expectancy. So now you're 85. In 20 years, you got $7,000 a year. So you got $140,000. The problem with that is, remember the $100,000 you gave them? So the profit is $40,000 because you gave them 100, and if you earn $40,000 over a 20-year period of time, simple math, 40 divided by 20, that's $2,000 per year. What was your original investment? It was $100,000. That's a 2% return.
I'm not motivated to want to do that. I don't get it.
But that gets lost in the conversation. We're going to take a break here and return here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris and Rob Field after these messages. Welcome back to Dollars and Cents with your hosts, Joel Garris and Rob Field of Nelson Financial Planning. Boy, Rob, we're working through a pretty important topic, and I hope our listeners have really kind of followed us as we've gone through and really dug down a little bit more into some of the information that you see on these annuity proposals, these guarantees about income, these guarantees about what you're going to potentially make, all of those kinds of things, because there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, that's for sure.
Right. I think the point we're trying to make is that they do sound attractive at face value. And you're going to, every bank, every investment firm, every insurance agent, this is their kind of go-to product to sort of act like they can do some things in the investment industry. Before you get too deep into it, before you start signing paperwork, check with somebody, check with us. We have these conversations all the time, either before, and like on this one, we managed to say, hey, pump the brakes. Let me tell you what you got or what you would get. And they chose not to go that direction because it didn't really fit their needs when we broke it down.
Well, and the effective rate of return, as I was walking our listeners through in the last segment. I mean, the effective rate. I'm going to get 7% income. Well, okay, do the math on it, and you wind up with 2%. 2% ain't 7.
Right. Insurance products aren't designed to help your money grow as an investment. Insurance products are designed to either give you life insurance or, the basic annuity, which would say, hey, I need some income for this special needs person, and I need to make sure that the money will be there. Yeah, you could make an argument for just a small annuitization, but as a growth investment, you just can't really come up with a good reason to jump into that.
But they pay a nice commission.
Well,
the highest commission product in the investment industry. They always have been, always will be. And that's the piece that people don't understand is, when somebody says, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's not going to cost you anything." Right. Well, everything costs you because the insurance company ain't doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
And an insurance agent who is not securities licensed can sell this product.
Sure.
So this is their way of sort of showing you something that sounds very exciting, but they haven't been trained.
They really don't have the license
taken
to be
a test,
able to,
don't have the license to truly talk about an investment product.
Yeah. And they ain't cheap.
No, the fees on these things are very expensive. Because you're buying guaranteed for life and income and all these bells and whistles. It's at least 3% typically, and the ones we were looking at with the last proposal was coming up on 4%. It was a 4% total, mortality, expense, investment. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and even on the fixed products, where the costs are certainly buried in. As we were talking about with the participation rates, the caps, that's a good way to kind of retain a lot of that profit for the purpose of the insurance company. I guess if something's sold with a 150-page document that you only get after you sign the paperwork, maybe you should think twice. But anyway, I think we've hit that one pretty hard. We're going to shift gears and go with a little bit happier topic here in our last segment, and then one that sort of emphasizes the importance of flexibility when it comes to your money and the kinds of things that you can use your money for, and how you need to best kind of set that up.
Right. When we look at all the different kinds of ways somebody could set up an account. So you could have a retirement account, an IRA, a 529, a 401k, a SEP. They're all designed to do different things. You can also have what we call non-retirement accounts or brokerage accounts where you're not putting the money in and then trying to get the tax deferral and you're saving it for retirement. It's a great way to address your future. But there's other accounts you could set up for different needs. So it could be the 529. It could be, we're going to buy a house in 10 years. One that I'm experiencing this year is saving money, investing it for a period of time to fund a wedding.
There you go. Okay. Yes, you've got a wedding coming up. Not your wedding, right?
No. I would have led with that, and I would have put that in segment 1 if I was getting married. And then you would look at me like, you're crazy. Yeah.
But yeah, these types of accounts, I mean, obviously when we're talking about what we refer to in the office as a regular investment account. And that's why I think it's important to kind of also do that. I think a lot of people focus on retirement accounts, and that's fantastic. Funding it through your employer with their 401k, maybe funding an IRA. But the types of accounts that you're talking about, Rob, are the ones that we like to think of as regular investment accounts. And those allow you to use them without big tax implications, right? You only got to pay taxes on the gain, and even that's capital gain, which is taxed at a lower rate than ordinary income rates. And so consequently, these accounts can be used for anything, like a house down payment, as you were mentioning, or a wedding. And isn't the wedding that you're on the hook for, isn't that like a destination wedding?
I'm on the hook for my daughter. From a small child, she kept saying, I'm going to get married in Italy, and I should have squashed that at the point. I was like, oh, that sounds so romantic. Good for you. And go back and play with your building blocks. And it spun out of control. And I'm a softie, so I didn't have the nerve to shut it down when I should have.
To the point where it is now, in fact, a upcoming reality.
Yes, it's coming up later in just a couple of months. And when you have something like that, everybody's got to get there. The wedding, it's in Italy, so it can't be a small wedding. It's got to be a big fancy wedding. And
well, all I can say is I'm glad I have boys, right? Because if I have 3 boys, so that means that I'm not on the hook. It's the bride's family that has to deal with that, right?
Yes and no, because the big thing now is the rehearsal dinner, and that's the groom's parents are in charge of that. So that's got to be a big fiasco. That's got to be competitive. 3 boys. You got 3 rehearsal dinners at some point. You need an investment plan that's just designated for a wedding, or 3 weddings.
That is a fair point. But I think it's also important, as with anything, that wedding, house. I mean, these in today's world can be relatively larger ticket items. So there's really some important considerations to be thinking about it, making sure that you are setting money aside in the right type of an account that's going to allow you to access that money without big tax implications, without penalties that could apply, certainly on a retirement account if you're not of a certain age.
Right. If you were thinking, well, I'll just start taking money out of my IRA, first of all, that's a big tax hit. Second of all, you're limited to how much money can go into your IRA. And the third thing is, if you're taking money out of your retirement plan to fund a wedding, that's less money you have for your actual retirement when the time comes. So what I did is the non-IRA or the non-retirement type plan, true investment. The beauty of that is I can put as much into it as I want, and I could start that years back. We could also make it kind of a community deal and say, hey, my daughter you need to be saving up some money. Grandparents, my mom and dad, they pitched in some money for it. We just planned ahead. We knew sooner or later there was going to be a wedding. So there's no limit to how much can go in either. So you can fund that thing as big as you want. And I would recommend be prepared to fund it big. It gets out of control. I mean, it's a wonderful situation, but there's a lot of expenses that I never even thought of that go into a wedding.
And so you've certainly got some tips, giving that you're living in the middle of it. What would you say to our listening audience about, what's the best way to try and get on top of all of this?
Right. So the first thing I did was, decide I need this investment to grow. I was planning ahead, so I wasn't going to just throw it in a savings account at the bank and then let it sit there. I needed it to be. First of all, it's in my name. I would try to contribute to it systematically. You can't just suddenly decide, okay, next year somebody's getting married, I'll come up with the money quickly. You got to plan ahead on that. So systematically put money in, let it grow, was aggressive with my growth. And then now I'm in a phase where the fund is funded, and now we can start taking out withdrawals as necessary for transportation or the venue or the food. And so I just keep making withdrawals. It's not that different from a retirement plan, that you fund it and then you need the money for something, you start pulling it out.
And certainly, I would imagine, and we've almost made it through the show without mentioning one of your favorite topics, but budgeting is probably pretty crucial on this thing.
It is, and not only do you have to budget so you can be prepared for all the costs, at some point you got to say, this is my max.
This is the limit.
This is how much you have to spend, and you got to sometimes do tough love and say, we're going to hold to that.
Indeed. Well, that's a good conversation here at the end of the program. We hope that you found this week's episode informative as always. if you've got an annuity, or if you've recently been pitched on one, we want to really take a moment here at the end of the program to encourage you to give us a call at the office and really sit down and have us walk through exactly what it is that you are either into or about ready to jump into. Those consultations, as always, are free of charge. Just go to our website at Nelson Financial Planning to schedule that free conversation. With that, we're going to get on out of here. This has been Dollars and Cents. Thanks for listening to this week's program.